Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today we're going to be talking about Ninja in Shadowbringers. Now, Ninja was my very first job that I got to endgame in Final Fantasy XIV. It is the one that kind of got me to stick to this game, and it also has a lot of firsts for me. First Extreme Trial, Savage Raid, Ultimate, all of that good stuff, so I'm pretty biased towards this job when it comes down to my personal enjoyment of it, and also the different iterations that it has had over the years. Now, if you picked up Ninja in Shadowbringers when the expansion just came out, then you might have felt that it wasn't really all that great. There was a lot of Gcd clipping involved with its playstyle because of all of the double weaving and even to some extent triple weaving that was going on because of how their ninjutsus worked, and also because of some changes that they made going into Shadowbringers. You were now doing 2 mudra ninjutsus a whole lot more, making it so that you would be clipping into your Gcd even more so than you did before, and it didn't really feel all that great. So they decided in patch 5.1 to do a complete overhaul of the ninjutsu system and also change a couple of other aspects of Ninja. So if you didn't like Ninja at the start of the expansion, it's probably worth another look, because Ninja right now does not play anything alike the Ninja from at the start of Shadowbringers, and then of course also previous expansions, because it's just completely different right now. So what has changed? Well, first of all, they changed the whole ninjutsu system, how this one interacts. It's not off global cooldowns anymore, they are GCDs now, and because of that they've made the ninjutsus a whole lot stronger, because of course going from an off global cooldown to being a GCD requires you to make it a little bit more potent as well. You can kind of compare it to how the dancers do their dances now as well. When it comes down to dancer, you press the dance button, then you press the steps, and then you press the dance button again. When it comes down to Ninja, you would just be pressing the steps and then the dance button. It's a little bit faster than the dancers' dances, but it still feels kind of similar to that system, which I've always praised that system. I thought it was really good. So them implementing this with the ninjutsus of Ninja actually feels pretty good as well. When it comes down to the playstyle, however, this thing changed completely as well, so it's not just the mechanical side of things. Right now, Ninja is a burst job. Before 5.1, before the rework, Ninja was more of a sustained DPSer with a small burst phase of 10 seconds during your trick attack, which is your raid buff window. But there was still a lot of other things that you were doing whenever your trick attack was not active, but then when you had the trick attack, that is where you would be using a couple of extra abilities, or you would try to save Gauge of your Ninky Gauge to like try to get an extra attack in there or something like that. But there weren't too many things that you would be saving specifically for this trick attack window. You would also be using a lot of your other abilities outside of the trick attack because they were just on a normal cooldown, or for example your damage over time ability was a combo action on one of your GCDs and you just had to refresh this every once in a while, so it was still something that you have to keep track of as well. Now, going into 5.1, they changed this completely, making it so that you're not really going to be using ninjutsus outside of the trick attack anymore. You only use one outside of trick attack, and that is the one to set up the trick attack itself, because to execute trick attack you need to have the sweet on buff, and that one comes from one of your ninjutsus. So that's pretty much the one that you're going to be using outside the trick window. The other ninjutsus you're all going to be using inside of your trick attack window. They've also changed your dot. It's not a normal combo action anymore. It's not something that you keep up all the time. It's on its own cooldown right now of 60 seconds, meaning that you're just going to be using it as a one button press during your trick attack window, and that is it. Kind of comparing it to Gunbreaker's Sonic Break, if you want to make a comparison right there. It's also just a one button that they use during their No Mercy window, and that is kind of how Shadowfang is right now for Ninja as well. So when it comes down to outside of the trick window, there isn't really all that much that Ninja is doing other than just doing your normal combos, making sure that your attack speed buff stays applied, and then also using your Ninky actions here or there to make sure you don't overcap your gauge. But outside of that, you're not really doing much outside of the trick window. Now, of course, to make up for that, the trick window right now is incredibly exciting and very busy as well. You've got all of your ninjutsus in there, you have that Shadowfang, you've got a bunch of off global cooldowns there too, and you of course want to try to save some Ninky so that you can use Ninky actions during the trick attack as well. So it's very much a burst job now rather than just a more sustained DPS with a little bit of extra stuff during their burst. It is now a very much low DPS outside of the trick window, but then your trick window itself is going to be loaded with things that you have to do. So if you're somebody like me that really likes burst-oriented jobs, kind of like, as I mentioned before, old-school machines from back in Stormblood, then this might actually feel pretty good to you, having a more slower, normal gameplay, and then having a 15-second burst window where you're going to be really busy, pretty much pressing all of the buttons. which does feel quite good. So let's talk about everything that Ninja has available to themselves. Now, of course, the big mechanic behind Ninja are the ninjutsus. Already quickly mentioned how they work, but basically you have 3 different buttons. These are called your mudras. They can also stack up to 2 times because they're a charged action. And depending on the combination in which you press these mudras, you are going to be creating different ninjutsus. So you press, for example, 1, 2, 3, then you press the ninjutsu, and that will then do your sweet on, for example. Or you can press 1, 2, will do your right on. You can press 2, 1, will do katon, for example, just to give a few examples. So it is something that you need to learn when you decide to play ninja. There are a bunch of different ninjutsus for you to learn. Also, when you interact with your Tenshi Jin, which is one of the, I believe it's the level 70 ability, that will allow you to execute 3 ninjutsus back to back. You also need to learn which the different combinations are to get the specific ninjutsus that you want to get out as well, because they combo into each other. So it comes down to a little bit of a learning curve if you want to try to pick up ninja, because you need to learn all of the different combinations in which you are going to be executing those ninjutsus. In reality, it's really not all that difficult. I think it is just fine as it is right now, but it might seem a little bit daunting if you're just getting into ninja, that you have to learn all these different combinations in which you would execute those ninjutsus. So that is kind of like the big mechanic behind ninja, the ninjutsus, something that you will have to learn. Now, of course, the other mechanics of ninja aren't really all that hard to make up for that. Second thing that we have is the Ninky Gauge. This one is very simple. Every time that you use a GCD, there are also a couple of other abilities that will generate Ninky Gauge for you, but you can get all the way up to 100 gauge. Once you reach that 50 gauge point, you can use your Ninky abilities, and we have 3 of them available to us. We have Bunshin. This is the strongest one by far, which will basically create a shadow clone, and then depending on if you do a single target, an AoE, or a ranged attack, your shadow clone is going to be following up with a specific potency attack depending on which type of attack you did. You don't need to worry about lining this up with strong parts of your rotation. You need to just do either single target, AoE, or ranged attacks. That's the only thing that your clone cares about. And then the other 2 are very simple. You use Bava Kakra for single target, you use Health Rock Medium for AoE. Those 2 abilities are not on a cooldown, Bunshin is, so you always want to use Bunshin first, and then you basically see single target or AoE, and then you choose accordingly to that. So relatively simple system. When it comes down to your normal GCD combos, Ninja is also very simple, because we only have 2 combos now. We have our Aeolian Edge combo, which is just a straight up damage combo, and then we have the Armor Crush combo, which is going to be what refreshes our attack speed buff. Now, our attack speed buff itself comes from our ninjutsus, the one called Huton, so that is something that you will be using at the start of the fight. You can also use the action called Hide, which will reset your mudras, just giving you 2 stacks again. So what you do is you use your Huton before the fight, then you use Hide to reset your mudra count, and then you start off the fight with full mudras charged and having the attack speed buff available already. And then through the course of the fight, you're going to be keeping up this attack speed buff by using the Armor Crush combo. The combo system itself is also very simple. You have a 1-2 combo that will then combo into both Aeolian Edge as well as your Armor Crush, kind of like how Warrior does it with Storm's Eye and Storm's Path. So it's really all not that bad, because you only really have 4 GCDs that you are going to be pressing leading into your 2 different combo actions, or your combo finishers, I guess you could call them. Now, of course, you're only going to be using these GCDs for the most part outside of your trick attack. Once you go inside of your trick attack window, that is where things get really hectic, because you're going to be using your mudras. You also have an ability called Kasatsu, which gives you access to special ninjutsus as well. So you do need to learn those different ones as well, but it's only really one that changes. So you're going to be using 2 normal ninjutsus that you have saved up from basically getting those 2 charges stacked. You're going to be using your special ninjutsu from your Kasatsu. You also have Dream Within a Dream, which is an off-global cooldown that combos into Assassinate, another off-global cooldown. You're also going to be using that Shadow Fang in there. Use whatever GCDs you have left, because of course not all of your GCDs are going to be spent on doing those ninjutsus or that Shadow Fang. Sometimes you'll have some extra time to put in a couple of other attacks as well. And then we of course also have the Tenshi Jin that is on a 2-minute cooldown that you will be using inside every other trick attack window as well. And another thing is we also have Meisui. This is another action that will generate Ninky Gauge for us, but this one requires the Sweet On buff to be active as well, and that is the same buff that we need in order to apply trick attack to the boss. So what you usually do is you use your Sweet On ninjutsu with your normal ninjutsus available to you, and then when you're inside of the trick attack, you use Tenshi Tenchi Jin to generate a second Suiton for you, and then you use Meisui on that Suiton to get yourself some extra Ninky Gauge inside of that trick attack. It might seem very daunting, might be a little confusing as I'm trying to like just explain everything that is here in a relatively short video, but if you just pick up Ninja, you hit a dummy for a little while, it kind of just flows on its own at some point, and it's really not all that bad as it might sound from just giving it a very quick explanation. So it's a relatively slow job outside of its burst window, where the only thing you're really doing is just doing that Aeolian Edge combo, doing that Armor Crush combo to keep your attack speed buff up, and then of course using those Ninky actions here or there to make sure you don't overcap your gauge. And then once you go into that trick attack, that is where you're going to be using all of those ninjutsus. You're going to be using that Tenchi Jin if it's available, you have your Shadow Fang, you also have that Kasatsu to get yourself that special ninjutsu, you have that Assassinate that is coming from your Dream Within a Dream of global cooldown as well, and then also use Ninky actions as they are available. So yeah, that is pretty much Ninja, a pretty fun job to play after you've learned it. It's definitely not as bad to play either, because it might sound pretty confusing getting into Ninja, but once you've learned everything that there is to learn, it's definitely not that bad to play. It performs pretty well as well, together with having a pretty decent personal DPS output. It also provides that trick attack, which has a very high uptime as well, by the way. It's a 5% damage buff for 15 seconds, and it's only on a 60-second cooldown, meaning that you have 25% uptime on this damage buff in pretty much all of the fights. So it's definitely one of the better raid buffs out there, and it's one of the things why a lot of people took Ninja in the past, but right now with the changes that were made in 5.1, Ninja itself also does pretty good personal DPS, on top of the fact that it still brings that trick attack. Trick attack itself got nerfed slightly to make up for the fact that it now does more personal DPS, but still 15-second trick attack, 5% damage up. Pretty good thing if you were to ask me. But that's pretty much Ninja. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments down below. Feel free to correct me down there. If you have any more questions about Ninja, feel free to leave them in the comments as well, and I'll definitely get back to you. But that's gonna be it for me. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you in the next one.